Let's talk about women's football in FM26. I am excited. I feel like a lot of content creators have said, if you're not happy about this, and like we're talking to like a minority, I think most people, if you understand that you can load the men's league, you can load the women's leagues, or you can load both at the same time. It's just like I don't care about playing in the Romanian first division, so maybe I don't load that league. It's the same thing. I'm excited that it's included because there's lots of people, and I have a daughter who at some point in the future may be inspired to play the game and watch their heroes play. That's exciting. We will also talk today about the matchday experience because they put out a little bit of extra information about what that looks like too. But first, let's talk about the women. The thing I am most disappointed about with this is here. There'll be 14 playable leagues across 11 nations and 3 continents. I can't highlight this because they've done something with the website where you can't highlight the text, probably so it can't be scraped. It also mentions here in the text at the bottom, it's not any smaller, but it's just after the massive screenshot, the top division in France and the top 2 divisions in Spain will also be playable in FM26. The reason that is disappointing is, to me, that means there is not the license for those leagues. And that means you're missing out on the likes of Lyon, who are dominant. You're missing out on Barcelona, who are really, really good. So that is a bit of a downer that they haven't been able to work that out over 2 years to get that into the game. But because I'm curious, are we going to see, just like we've seen in like some of the other videos about the Premier League, are we going to have all the photos and the badges from all the licensed leagues so that you don't have to load them yourselves? It's a little bit of a downer that of the only 14 leagues, you're missing 3 of the leagues, and 2 of them are really important in my opinion because Lyon and Barcelona are so good. It talks about here that, it's taken 30 years to build up the men's database. So, hey, we're going to start small and expand. That makes sense. And that they're using the same 20-point scale, but that essentially if you are like Bunny Shaw here at 19 and finishing, that is compared to the other women players. And that makes complete sense. It is a different game. It's the same, laws of the game, if you will. But obviously there are differences between the 2 genders that are playing this. And it would be weird if, the top women finishers were rated as a 17, 18, 19, 20, or if their pace was a little bit lower than the fastest, than Usain Bolt or something like that. So it makes sense that you're comparing against the players you can sign in the women's leagues. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm wondering how many players are going to buy the game and not have looked at any of this stuff, and then they're going to be very confused when they learn about there are significant differences in contracts, finances, and the transfer market. So how many people are going to be like, why can't I put in a release clause? And it's like, because it's not that common. And obviously the prevalence of and recovery rates for certain injuries. At the end of the day, what do you want out of a football management simulation game? You want it to be as realistic as possible. So what they're calling out is contracts are different. Injuries are different. Club finances, clearly very, very, very different. So the fact that contracts are typically shorter means you're going to have to be a lot more active in the transfer market or more on top of your contract. So that'll be really interesting. I'm actually thinking this is one of the most interesting things about adding women into the game is, yes, you have a different gender on the pitch and okay, you've got tactics and whatever, but how different the financial and transfer market side, I think, is a major difference to the men's game. And that should provide us a challenge as players. A thing I find a bit strange is they talk about they've changed the new generation process that is focused on staff. Like, it doesn't specifically say it's not about players, but it only talks about in this section more movement of coaches and managers between the men's and the women's games in FM26. You'll experience more depth and originality in every career. Some of the staff generated will only work in the women's game and vice versa, while some will work across both. They've changed existing owners and new gen owners to reflect the likelihood of hiring across men's and women's football. That's great. I'm curious as, again, you're going back. I did not play Football Manager or Championship Manager when the database was probably as small as the women's database will be in FM26. So I'd like to hear from you in the comments. How different was it? How different were the new gens? Like, was it broken to where, are you going to see the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Barcelona, Lyon, their new gen players coming through youth academies are just going to be outstanding elite players? Or is it going to be more balanced? That's something that I just think is odd that they talk about new gen generation, but they only then highlight the staff side. So I'm a bit confused. The bottom of the blog post just talks about how they did motion capture specifically for the women's game, which you would expect, right? Of course you would do that. This is talked about in the other update about the match experience, but they have done some I would say not enough from what I've seen thus far of trying to make the pitches that you're seeing and the stadiums that you're seeing look like the surrounding area. We'll see. I'm not familiar where this game is being played necessarily, but I'm not. The trees look better. They're definitely better than like the one dimension this way, other dimension this way trees that we have in FM24. But it doesn't look outstanding. That being said, there are a variety of buildings, so it looks, as long as this is not the standard, medium-sized city view, that's an improvement. And as I think other people have noted, when you see this screen where you can choose your leagues, men's, women's, etc., and then pick your team, it just says club. It does not say club or international or unemployed. So I think international is toast, and that I think in a year of the biggest World Cup from a number of team standpoint, that is a massive, massive loss. And that's really unfortunate because they've had 2 years to fix it. They're talking about motion capture here at this point of the video and how it's more realistic movement. And it does look good. I still think the crowds look a little meh, like it could be a lot better. But at least like they're moving in some sort of fashion. They're moving their arms. And I think this is pointed out in my Discord, which you should join. The link is in the description below. Is this the burger van, but different? But it looks fuzzy. I'm not sure, like it's blurred out as it moves through here, which is kind of, I don't know. Why is it blurred out? But again, you see above the stadium, that looks like a unique area where, again, my hope is that I don't want to say it shouldn't be hard. Clearly, it would be hard. Developing games is hard. But to take just Google Maps images, which they would have to license, but you get the idea. It's like looking at what the surrounding area looks like. So from this angle, you could see what it actually might look like. And I like even the variation that like the roofs are, different colors. So that gives me a little bit of hope of what the area around the stands is actually going to look like. So there's not a whole lot more in that section that isn't covered also in the blog post about this. But overall, I think it's clearly a solid improvement. It's something that they call out that they promised back in 2021 that they would be adding. It has taken a long time to get it into the game. I just think we have to maybe temper our expectations a little bit. Again, I didn't play when FM was a much smaller database, but the women's game is just now starting to get like really popular. So the fact that it's in the game and they call out that they're going to eventually obviously expand the database. I'm just curious how like the regen, new gen, whatever you want to call it, they call it new gen, that must be the official term, process works and how that will influence the game, especially with the French and Spanish leagues not being licensed. So I'm curious how that impacts like how the game, simulates, if you will. But overall, very excited. In fact, I'm happy to share with you here that one of my first beta saves will be with a women's team. I had one picked out, but it was in the French league. And since that's going to be unlicensed and probably no faces and no badges, I'm going to be pivoting. We'll figure it out more soon on that. Equally as exciting is what they've shared about the matchday experience, which is kind of like the second update that they've given us about the matchday experience. And it provides a little bit more detail. And I am very excited about these changes. The first thing it talks about is richer on-pitch visuals, which essentially means we've improved the lighting. It's going to look more like what you actually see when you're watching on TV or if you're in the stands. So there's more shadows, there's new stadium designs, which I talked about in a previous video. So it's going to look different depending on the elite arenas that you're playing in or the lower league grounds. And it calls out specifically here that it has more detailed and authentic looking surfaces, making rain and snow much more evident. The existing shading or whatever you want to call it for FM24 has some work to do. It's okay. I'm just curious because they haven't shown it obviously in the highlights. It's all shiny and new and green. And I'm just curious, what does that actually look like when it's pouring or when it's snowing? They call out that they've changed animations. They've added more animations. They've gotten data from Hawkeye Innovations and not only just added, that data in, but they've actually like changed the dribbling AI technology. So attackers now have the ability to stand up a defender and then bait them before taking them on. So again, you're trying to make it look as realistic as possible. We'll watch the video a little bit later as to what that looks like. But all of this is like they're enhancing what was already there. So you're getting better lighting effects. You're getting the shadowing that you can see on the video there and the better animations to go with it. All of that I'm very excited about. Of course, our excitement should be tempered by the reality of the situation. It's one thing to say it's improved. It's another thing to see you playing the game, not like some created and we captured this ourselves and maybe there's a specific scenario we made the game show you for a video. Is it actually going to be different? And one of the things that makes me a tad bit nervous, because the potential is there for it to be a big change, but it kind of depends on what actually happens, is they call it extensive work on the AI in the match engine itself, alongside further AI changes to support new tactical tools, all of which you'll learn about in a forthcoming deep dive. Now, other people pointed this out, and I think it's in the video. It looks like there is an in possession and out of possession tactical formation that you can do a 4-3-3 when you have the ball, and a 4-1-4-1 if you want when you're in a defensive out of possession stance. That sounds great. I'm just curious, some of the things that I called out in my video up here about the 26 things that FM26 must fix. One of the things is how AI managers react tactically. So when it says the match engine and the new tactical tools, I'm not in depth enough on FM to understand if we're talking about the same thing there, but I don't want to see managers dropping into a 3-4, 2-1 when they've been playing a 4-2-3-1 when they're down a goal at the end of a game. I see that too many times in FM24 where it's like the opposition just goes like, well, we give up. We just won't score. We just want to not concede, which just doesn't make any sense to me. It also says that they've changed the way pass risk is assessed. So that'll be interesting. You should be able to better play passes through traffic, but like that's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do in football. So I'm curious how that is impacted by the level that you're playing at. Like if I'm playing with my beloved Stirling Albion in the essentially 4th division in Scotland, it should be in some ways harder to make that pass, which is why you see a lot of hoofball, right? Like I'm just kind of curious how that's actually, it's one thing to marketing say, it's going to be great. And it's another thing to experience it. So I'm excited to experience it. And if you're excited to experience the women's game or these match changes in FM26, you can get 22% off using my link in the description. It should automatically add the code GrayHairGaming with Fanatical, which is a Sega authorized retailer. So you get 22% off the game and early access, which is something we traditionally call the beta. Thanks for your support. It does help the channel every so little bit. This next section is something I'm absolutely thrilled about. They have rebuilt the camera system to make it look more like what you see on television, which is fantastic. They also specifically call out replays are significantly revamped as part of our camera work with a range of new angles added. It uses information on the type of goal scored to determine the replay, I think it should say angle, that you're shown, ensuring you get the perfect perspective on your team's breakthroughs, no matter how they hit the back of the net. So right now, in FM24, you set what angle you want to see the replay. So a lot of times it's like behind goal. But what if that's not the best angle? I love that they've theoretically automated the replay will now show you the coolest angle. Like that is a phenomenal improvement. And that's not all. Ha, that's hilarious. I didn't realize it said that's not all on the blog post. That was me trying to be clever. Dynamic highlight mode, which is where I am a little nervous about this as well. If you're already up 4-0 and closing in on a victory, the number of highlights will drop accordingly. So I guess I'm just thinking from as both a player and a content creator, if the game is just like and cruising along and you're behind, you're like, well, I guess this is not going very well for us, right? But obviously, if you're ahead or behind and you start seeing a lot of highlights, it's going to indicate that you could have a chance here. I'm just curious, like how dramatic that difference is, right? Again, if you're down 4-0, like let's reverse it from you're already up 4-0. You're down 4-0. Are you still going to get no highlights? In which case you're like, yeah, we're just getting punched in the face today. So overall, conceptually, that's exciting. As you can see on this screen as well, they do have the option for 2D replays for the old school 2D players. So I'm really excited that the cameras have changed and that they've made it dynamic. It might seem like a small thing, but I think this is probably one of the bigger changes, at least of this section of the updates. Like, yes, you've made the pitches look better and the weather effects look more realistic. Fantastic. And you can toggle dynamic mode on and off too. But I think giving the ability to get through seasons faster, because if you are 3 seasons in, maybe more than 3 seasons, but like we've all gotten to a point where like I'm cruising. I'm like crushing all my opposition because I'm staying in the same league. You can get through games faster if like you're playing those bottom quarter of the table teams. Boom, boom, boom. We're up, no problem, game's done. That means you can get more games as a player more often. That's huge. That is a huge potential change I'm excited for. Obviously, and I didn't call this out. It says the more important and dramatic the game is, so the Champions League final or a cup final or something like that, you're gonna get more highlights than you would in a regular game or a game against a you draw a third division team in Germany in your DFB Pokal first round or whatever. You're not going to see as many highlights. I think it's smart. What that does to us as players is it gives us more drama when we want it. It allows us to cruise to those moments of drama faster. That's big. It also calls out that they've improved the audio. I don't play with sound, so I'm kind of curious how much better it might be. This is what you get in between highlights. I am confused. And the reason I'm confused is because there is a scroll bar. A scroll bar in 2025. When you have hyped up that we've gone to this tile system, having to admit, I guess, that you can't get the information onto the screen that you want in an effective manner without a scroll bar just seems odd to me. I don't know if I'm being too critical there. That just seems like such a weird thing when you're used to, and again, maybe this screenshot is taken on a smaller screen. Right now, when you play FM24, at least how I'm playing on a essentially, what is that? It's not 1080p, it's the 1440p. There's a lot of screen real estate, which is why people who make skins have been able to adjust things so like you can have all sorts of stuff on that screen in between highlights. This seems like a bit of a downgrade. Now, it's giving you the 2D view, which I guess is neat. It depends on how fast it's moving, though, right? Like if it's like I'm a little. It just seems weird to me, folks, that there's a scroll bar. And if you're playing on key highlights, I'm questioning how useful this 2D view is going to end up being, because if the game is ticking along, right, where you got, it's like there goes a minute, there goes a minute, there goes a minute. What is this going to show you? So I don't love that. And I also don't love that the match stats seem very small and like limited. I would much prefer, like, how I play, I don't care about the latest scores. Like, I can only focus on my game. I might check the latest scores at the half. That's pretty rare. You've got the formations, fair. You've got the match events, which used to be on the left, but you've got, again, I worry about all the screen real estate that we could be using, and instead we've had to smash it down with a vertical scroll bar. I want the match stats. I want more. I don't want just XG. I want to see, chances created or fouls or the ability to enhance what I see, because I don't think this tells you the full story. So this one I kind of go, ooh, let's see how it actually plays out and like how adjustable any of this is. Obviously, you can there's the expand here, so you can minimize it. Yeah, I don't know about that. And above this section, it does talk about how your assistant will make better recommendations. Essentially, like if you're winning 4-0 and you want to take the sting out of the game, you can lower your tempo to save your player's energy and stuff like that. That's fine. Like that's an improvement. That's fine. Down here, it talks about there's better cutscenes. I don't know. I think the first time you win the league, I think it's going to be great. Or you win the Champions League or the Europa League or something like that. That's going to be cool to see. If you are becoming a dominant team or you start out with a dominant team and you're winning the league all the time, I think it probably ends up being like the existing celebrations where it's like, okay, that was cool. But if there's only, like, does it even say how many there are? It says the cutscenes are more detailed, visually vivid than ever. But again, if you essentially have one cutscene for winning the league and it's like the equivalent of an FM24 walking up on the stage and the fake confetti going off and people jumping around, and that's it, and it kind of looks the same every single time, that's not as exciting. So I guess it just depends on how challenging it is to win leagues and where you're playing. I'm all for the change, I guess. This doesn't excite me nearly as much, though. Just scrolling through the video here. Again, at least there's a different looking burger van or, merch shop. Maybe that's a merch shop, which, again, if that is different for every stadia that you're in, great. That's a slight improvement. This part is also, again, you kind of go like, okay, how many different tree models do you see here? Is it the same tree model just turned several different ways? I might be the only person that cares about the burger vans and the trees and the fans, but it's important. I do like that it looks significantly different. This is obviously the women's game, so it's a much smaller stadium because that's the reality of the situation in the women's game right now. So it looks like they have some improvements, but how significant? Yeah. Again, different view there of the corner of the building. So like that doesn't look like some of the other views we've seen. So that go okay. Like we've at least taken some effort to model where these places sit because again, they keep talking about, and I'm really curious if it's just a marketing thing they're using or if there's something else that they're hinting at. They keep talking about it like storytelling. Well, part of telling a story is the setting. And so if these are the players on the stage, the setting around them is important. So the fact that the stadiums and the stands look more accurate is a giant first step. The fact that the buildings outside of the stands, especially if you're going to highlight, we got all these different new camera angles and views and dynamic and da 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 da. Well, it has to look different when you go to different stadiums too. And it should look like the stadiums that you play in. Anfield should look like Anfield. Everton Stadium should be on the river. You should be able to tell a difference. So that looks good. And again, the shadowing and the textures, all of this looks great. And I like that it's a different angle. This kind of looks like EA FC from the corner taking standpoint. All of that is very positive. Things that just to point out my personal concerns here. I don't like that you don't see the player names on the bottom, like where the subs are down here. It's just their positions and the rating. So you don't see names, you don't see faces. And that seems weird when you've got a lot of these leagues licensed to where all of the graphics that they're showing has got like players' faces on it, right? Like from like the player attribute screen, if you will. I don't know. I think they're trying to give you more visibility into the game. You don't even get their names. Like give me a double the height of the row to give me their name at least. So it's like versus striker. I don't know. That seems a bit strange to me. And maybe it's because it's just condensed. And if you click the sub button, maybe it pops up and you can see the full view. But that seems a bit odd to me. Again, they just talked about in the video, the stadiums are revamped down to lower league grounds, trying to model the local area. So again, I'm not thrilled with those models. I think the trees still kind of it doesn't look like the same type of graphics were used, but it's an improvement. So I guess we'll take the improvements where we can get them. And this looks good. I can't remember the last time I saw the sky like at night in FM. Maybe it's because I'm not playing any like Champions League or title games or whatever. But I like the lights and that to me goes like, okay, that is a different experience right there. So that's cool. Okay, this part of the video does show the 2D thing moving. That seems like a lot to be processing. I'm not sure how useful that is. Maybe if you're used to playing in 2D, that'll be something where you go, oh yeah, that looks great. But having it go like, I guess maybe okay, if we scroll back here, maybe this is replacing the existing thing that shows like where the attacks are coming from, like from a percentage standpoint. I just think if it's moving really fast, does that really, I don't know. I'm not convinced that's the best way to have done that. And that's the end of the video. So I do think it's more of a mixed bag on the matchday experience. And maybe I'm being too nitpicky, so I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Clearly, super excited that women's football exists. Disappointed that the French and Spanish leagues aren't going to be licensed. At least that's my assumption because they don't have the names listed on the blog post where they have all the other names listed here. The fact that they have made the stadiums and the surrounding areas at least look somewhat more like the surrounding areas and the stadiums much more realistic, and the lighting and textures look significantly better, I think is a huge plus. And I'm actually very excited. If this works as it should, the dynamic highlight mode should make it easier to play more games as a player. And I think that is that is a quality of life improvement where you're not just sitting here going like, okay, I'm going to click play. We're playing bottom of the table. I'm top of the table. I'm going to watch a YouTube video. I'm going to watch this guy Gray Hair Gaming over here on my second screen or on my phone or on my whatever, right? It helps you get through more games faster so you can play more of the game. That is brilliant if it works. I'm okay about the cutscenes and I'm worried about this screen. So again, kind of a mixed bag. Those are my thoughts, my friends. I did a poll on the channel and this is what you all wanted to see next. So I've kind of combined the women's football and the the match day experience together. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you hit that like button. Also, I've just been approved to have YouTube members. I'm working on what that might actually look like in terms of what I can offer you, but I'll definitely give you a shout out. So if you are looking to support the channel, you can now do YouTube memberships, and you can also do Patreon. I have about another 900 hours of watch time to get before I can be monetized. But again, if you've enjoyed this, hit that like button, leave a comment of your thoughts, and we'll see you next time.